Hello, everybody. Nelson Virgil here with excelmail.com and discountedlabs.com. I have my good friend here, Dr. Rand McClain. I don't think we have done a video in years now. We've done a few, and you can find them on excelmail.com on the YouTube channel. So, Dr. McClain, thanks a lot for joining us. A lot of the guys want to talk to you about the latest advances in hormone replacement, men and women. So we're going to cover that. But first of all, tell us what you have been up to. I hear that you have a new clinic and a new book coming out. So go ahead and let us know.
We have been busy. We have a new clinic in Houston over in the Woodlands, and Dr. Todd is heading up that practice. He's the medical director over there. We're open now officially as of, I think, the beginning of August. So, you got another place where if you want to go see a doctor, you can. Of course, we still do telemedicine across the United States and elsewhere, really. Been up to, finally finished writing the book. As a matter of fact, I was just showing you earlier. Yeah, we have a copy. Actually, it actually looks real to me now, not just conceptual. And that's been exciting. And it's been a lot of work, I have to say. I mean, you know better than I. I mean, not sure I'll do another one. Maybe rest on it for a while and see what happens. But and the thing is, everything changes. So you always want to add something else. I know you know this, but maybe the audience doesn't. But other than that, we're keeping busy, trying to stay up with, as you say, the latest and greatest optimizing health. So I know that's what we're here to talk about.
Well, you are on it. You have always been progressive. I wrote my book years ago, maybe 12, 13, and I was following back then what you had to say online and obviously taking notes for my book. So I know the book writing process is a painful one. So tell us, it's called, you showed it, but you took it away too fast. Show us again the cover.
It's called Cheating Death, The New Science of Living Longer and Better. And it's available on Amazon for, I guess they call it a pre-sale. But yeah, it's finally out. It's finally real to me, more so than before. And I'm excited about it. Why wouldn't I be? Because it grows from a lot of effort. But the whole intent was to try and get as much information out there as possible. Right now, RSM, Todd and I are just two guys really. And while we can put some stuff on, as you know, with websites and newsletters and stuff, this is a way to share it with everybody, because the problem I have, without going into too much, is that, there's mainstream medicine, as you know, and then there's the other medicine, which has its roots in science, obviously. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it, or I wouldn't be. But it's not part of what I call paint by numbers medicine, the mainstream, HMOs and that sort of thing. And a lot of patients don't get to hear about it. So this at least spreads the word, and then we can sort of speed the process up, as I hallucinate things might be anyway, by patients then asking their doctors, hey, well, what about this? What about that? And even stuff that you don't have to go to a doctor for. So that's the idea.
Yeah, now we are more empowered as patients, consumers like me, to get information, read books, get your own blood tests, go see a doctor in telehealth or telemedicine, from your own home, get your products shipped from a compounding pharmacy. So there's a lot of access that we didn't have even 15 years ago, 10 years ago. People people usually tend to think that healthcare is getting worse in this country, but they forget that we're the only country in the industrialized world that has all this access for direct to consumers. I mean, consumers here, yes, you do have to have the money, and not, they're usually reasonable, but you can have access to a lot of cutting edge stuff depending on the doctor you see. So why don't we talk about that? I mean, the field is, like you say, evolving quickly. I think you've been on the field for how many years now, Dr. McClain? 30, well, I know.
Let's just say I'm coming up on 60 years at this point in age. So yeah, a goodly amount of that has been, as a physician and treating people. So, and it's been great. I mean, I was reading in the paper the other day about the guy who made the Guinness Book of World Records. He's 99 years old, the oldest practicing physician. I hope to, with all due respect to him, beat his record one.
And you will, man. You wrote the book. You know.
I got to live long enough, right?
Right, right. Yeah, you're committed now. So what is the most exciting stuff happening when mostly let's talk about products and treatments out there that most people may not know about. Like nandrolone, for instance. I'm obviously I'm biased for nandrolone. I wrote my first book about nandrolone. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned about the medical use of nandrolone.
Nandrolone's fantastic because it doesn't, as you know, come with a lot of androgenic side effects, right? And very little of it converts to estrogen. So it's a pretty safe drug in the sense that the side effects that a lot of us are trying to avoid don't come with it, right? It's a fairly unique one because it's what we call in the field, if you will, a NOR19 base. And while there are others, it's not the mainstay of anabolic steroids. Although this one, you know, I say that, and it is the mainstay in medical use, particularly for its anabolic effect for accretion of muscle mass. I use it a lot in my practice for anyone with a wasting disorder of any kind. Anybody who could use the safety of an extra 20, 25 pounds, there's no question. It's a go-to without even hesitating. It's not one of the expensive ones either. So it's really a nice thing to have in our tool chest for anyone who needs that extra, I call it an extra 20, 25 pounds. That's probably for a male patient, but or for a female too, maybe it's the extra 10 or 12 pounds that, God forbid, you get sick or an exacerbation of the wasting disorder you already have. You're definitely much safer. And, I can't say enough good things about it. It's an injectable anabolic steroid. It's very easy on the liver. There are some potential side effects. I don't know if I can use the vernacular for what the common side effect is, but well, let's just say there's some occasional erectile dysfunction that can be associated with it, but typically it can be resolved by having a ratio of testosterone to nandrolone, which is great enough. Typically, a lot of guys get away with 1-to-1, but typically a 2-to-1 ratio will eliminate the issue. Without getting too technical, it just has to do with what nandrolone and what testosterone can be converted into. Dihydronandrolone is a very weak androgen. And so there are some gentlemen out there who do better, or let's put it the other way around, who don't do well. Their mojo leaves them when they don't have enough dihydrotestosterone, which is much more androgenic in effect. And so if you replace it with dihydronandrolone, you can see where there might be a problem. And that's one of the reasons, a quick side note, where I recommend that patients, if they're taking or want to take a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, don't do so while using nandrolone, because we want to go ahead and let it convert typically to the dihydronandrolone to avoid all the other side effects that relate to androgenicity. So I know that sounds complicated, but we have sort of a fix for everything if there's a need for it. And then the other exciting part about nandrolone recently is, through studies that I think Dr. Todd participated in, and you're well aware of, using what I call a half dose of nandrolone over the long term, indefinitely, in other words, not necessarily for wasting disorder, but for pain management. For those guys that suffer intractable pain, we tried everything else. And of course, even if NSAIDs work for you, it's not something you want to be on long term for a myriad of reasons, including kidney function that you want to preserve, heart issues that can creep up on you from taking NSAIDs for too long, gastrointestinal issues. So that's been really exciting because we've probably been using it in our practice really for as long as it's been out, because you alerted me to it right away, and we've had great success. And what's interesting too is if you have someone who's typically what we would call it a hard weight gainer, someone who has difficulty holding weight, while it's not going to give you the same anabolic effect as the typical dosage, which would be about 200 milligrams a week. I'm not talking about bodybuilder dosages. I'm talking about medical.
Of course, medical.
The so-called half dose tends to help really well. So it's really been a great time so far observing what we can do with what I call the half dose.
Yeah. And, Baylor has also, they've actually published, well, posted different posters in urology conferences about the joint healing properties. They've seen good results here in Houston at Baylor College of Medicine. So it's very promising for me, because obviously my first book, Built to Survive, which is free, you can find the PDF free on powerusa.org. Years ago, it was mostly about nandrolone and testosterone combo to reverse wasting syndrome in HIV. We were dying of wasting. I'm HIV positive, been so for almost 40 years. And basically, I'm alive. I'm sitting here because of that combo. Otherwise, yeah. I would be under, 6 feet under. So obviously, I have very strong biases. It is FDA approved, like oxanolone, and it has a lot of data in humans and a lot of data even in older patients, in women, very low doses. So I'm glad that medical establishment and big schools like Baylor are picking up on it and actually doing studies. It is a generic. It does not, it basically, the pharma industry has abandoned it. So it can only be compounded and it's really low cost. So, but most doctors are misinformed or don't know how to use it. So very few doctors are progressive enough and know the data enough, like you and the folks at Baylor, to actually use it at a lower dose, obviously, for other uses. So I'm biased. I've done it I've used nandrolone since the 80s. I'm here because of it. So I'm excited to see this transition into general medical clinical use in aging men and women too. So kudos for you. And that's something most guys on Excel Mail are very, very interested about. Let's talking about weight gain, muscle gain, or that's nandrolone is an injectable. There's an oral peptide growth hormone releasing hormone, called abiramorin, but it's mostly, more related to leptin and, the appetite suppressing or appetite enhancing. So do you have any experience on this oral peptide called abiramorin?
Absolutely. Ibutamorin, also known as MK677, is one of the most efficacious that I've ever seen. It is efficacious and effective. And what I mean by that is because it's so easily administered, it's an oral rather than an injectable, people have an easy time. It's not one of those where you go to bed, which is typically where you should be taking it right before bed, and then go, oh my goodness, I got to go downstairs and get out of the refrigerator my vial and draw it up, etc. Or wherever you have it hidden because you don't want people to, for whatever your reasons are, see that you have something injectable in the refrigerator or whatever. So this you can leave on your bedside table. It's a capsule. In my experience, it has shown more efficacy than any of the others, as I said earlier. I've seen numbers that you're not supposed to see. An IGF-1, I'll never forget the number, 464. That's supposedly not possible because of the negative feedback loop in the body, but I've seen it. And then I read, I'm not going to be able to quote the name of the paper, but it was probably in the last 2 months, something released showing the efficacy through, a rather well-powered study, that it works better than any of the others, which is what I was observing. But it's nice to see it backed up with something other than just my observation of, however many patients I have. So yeah, that one's really exciting. The only potential side effect that I've seen with that, by the way, you mentioned the hunger factor. It's the same mechanism of action, ghrelin, that occurs with marijuana use. The munchies, they call it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you take it right before bed, typically you'll sleep through it. And on rare occasions, and it's usually someone who has, for example, sleep apnea, and they wake up because of that, and they go, well, gee whiz, I'm hungry. Do people wake up and say, okay, I got to go raid the kitchen? Which, by the way, I've had experience with. I took it thinking that, well, let me just see what it does. And, I'll train empty and go to the gym. I turned around and came back to my home with enough hunger. It looked like a bomb went off in my kitchen. So it can have a very powerful effect on it. So you don't want to channel surf after you take it. Definitely take it for bed. But it works very well to promote your own production of growth hormone. And that's a winner. The only other potential side effect is in probably 20 to 25% of the patients, I'll see some water retention. It's usually temporary. You're nodding, right? 4 to 6 weeks, as much as 3 months. I've seen it rarely. but usually your body then adjusts, you get used to it. And is that effect of the ibutamoren, or is it an effect of its effectiveness to promote such a big release of growth hormone, which anytime that happens too, you can get some of those similar side effects, right?
Yeah, yeah. I took 25 milligrams and I had to stop the car I was driving. I had to stop and find some food. I was really, I was shaking of my hunger. So for me, obviously 25 milligrams is too high. Many doctors are going down to 12 and a half milligrams or taking it every other day. But I would wake up and, I tell people, if you're going to take it, have really good food, like protein-based food in your kitchen and in your fridge. Because if you're hungry and you start eating all the carbs and stuff, the water retention is a lot more. So I stopped it, obviously. But, the first, I've seen all the data from Merck. Merck did a lot of the studies in older patients to reverse loss of lean mass in patients, older patients. And they saw some gain in fat. These people were not working out, obviously. But what they saw is a spike in cortisol in the first few weeks. It actually worked off. So for a lot of us, especially me, I always have like a grade 3 pain scale factor. I'm not going to get into details. That extra cortisol really serves as a pain, kind of a pain management drug. So that is the first thing I saw. I saw that my joints were actually looser and better on the drug. So that I have to say, I'm looking forward to starting it again at 12.5 and see if I can, because I gained 10 pounds in 2 weeks, mostly a lot of it water, obviously. But I don't forget, I was driving and I had to go somewhere and eat because it's a hunger that I've never experienced before. So I wish we had it back in the days of HIV wasting. That would have, because Nanolone works, but ibutamoren in a matter of a month, we could have reversed death. And people with cancer cachexia, obviously oncologists tend to be more afraid of IGF-1 than anything else. There's a potential there. There's another company that is actually using ibutamoren, and they may actually get it approved for a growth hormone stimulation test for children, that are having failure to grow, and to see how their, pituitary is working. So it may be the first approved indication soon for that oral. But the fact that it's oral, the IGF-1, like you said, response is so great. Yeah, the appetite, maybe the lower dose, maybe eat more protein, work out more. It's a very promising, I do think, the fact that it's oral, you don't have to inject. And it has no effect on LH, FSH, testosterone. It has no effect on peripheral hormones that usually when you take something like Nanolone, testosterone goes down, LH goes down, So that's actually very promising. But anyways, I'm sorry.
Bring up a lot of tangents too that we can skip if you want to, but briefly, the cortisol, unfortunately, that you enjoy in the beginning tends to go away with ibutamoren more so than some of the others, which some people complain about, particularly the guys that are trying the best they can to hold muscle mass. They don't want the cortisol's catabolic effect. But you make a great point, because in the smaller dosages, like, we can get through Empower, the 12 and a halves can be used to stimulate appetite, which, as you were talking about, can help with, a combo of nandrolone, which helps with appetite a little bit, but then, it does the anabolics from a different angle. The food intake that can be increased. And so many people have reasons why they don't feel like eating this. You can't help it, as we both described, right? So what a great combo in a smaller dose. And for cancer cachexia, right, I would argue that, and I don't have any studies to prove it, but think about the theory anyway, at least for now, and we'll see what happens down the road. If you're treating somebody with chemotherapy, if the cancer is chemotherapy treatable, the theory behind it, very briefly, is that the chemo kills the faster replicating cells, cancer, right? So what do you care if there is some side effect of growth hormone release along with the hunger you're getting using ibutamoren if that cancer is there? There's an argument there that it could actually further, think about that for a second, further the benefits of the chemotherapy, because you're promoting the more rapid growth anyway and turnover of cells. Just a theory, but I personally, I wouldn't worry about it. I would think more about the life-saving weight that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's a great hypothesis. Somebody in oncology needs to test it. And that would be obviously a great thing. So let's jump into sexual function, erectile dysfunction. Somebody else, that's another hot topic. An old product, also not pharma, not created by pharma, it's actually compounded. Trimix, Quadmix, there's even a Pentamix. Tell us your clinical experience. I obviously have my strong biases, but go ahead, please.
Well, it's a great product. I mean, it's normally reserved for, if you tried sharpshooting and then, went to shotgun and now you got to use a bazooka. That said, I mean, it doesn't have to be used for that because, I'm out here in Los Angeles and I don't think it's any surprise that we have a burgeoning porn industry here. And just for that reason alone, I mean, it's fantastic. It does have potential side effects that are, untoward in the sense that you can overdose on it, and that is not a good deal. There are treatments for that. Typically, we use Sudafed or pseudoephedrine in whatever form we can. Otherwise, we got to drain it with typically a very large, like a 16 gauge needle, which, I mean, the thought of injecting your penis with anything, period, other than a little insulin needle to get this going is not welcome. But, if used properly, it's fantastic for not only, we'll call it recreational purposes, meaning for those who don't need it, but certainly for those that are suffering from erectile dysfunction secondary to blood flow, say, a defective valve. And this is, a precursor, not a precursor, that's not the right word, but something you would use well before you'd consider an implant, so very, very useful and not expensive relative to some of the others out there, the other options. Typically we start with a PDE5 inhibitor, but, a lot of people have side effects of that too, right? Low back pain, headaches. So it's a great option. And I use it a lot in our practice here.
Yeah, I can take most of the PDE5 inhibitors. I have back pain. I have all the side effects: heartburn, flushing of the face, sinus congestion, headaches. You could have an erection, but who's going to want to have sex with all the side effects? So some people are lucky enough to take daily Cialis at 5 or 10 milligrams, and they're doing great, and I am jealous of them. But a lot of us, for some reason, we may have different PDE5 receptors that are completely cannot, or most of them, maybe tadalafil or the weaker ones. But Trimix is a sure thing. Priapism, which is what you mentioned, having an erection for more than 3 hours, people think, oh, that's great, that's fun. But it actually could be very dangerous for your penis. You can have blood accumulating there and coagulating and potential gangrene. So it has to be prescribed. Yeah, prescribed by a doctor that can train, and there are videos too that some doctors provide for the injection sites. And I'm sure you and in LA and Dr. Todd here in Houston can show patients, walk-in patients that can actually be shown how to inject and how to actually do the whole procedure, right? So that
sounds daunting. I mean, no one wants to even think about it, injecting their own penis, but it's on the shafts of the penis in an area which really, I mean, I think a thorn stick would be way worse on your finger. I mean, not on your penis. So that I know it sounds daunting, but I think patients will find once you use it the first time, it's not that big a deal. But if I might, in keeping with sort of the title of our conversation here, in terms of the latest and greatest, there was a 2017 study published in the Heart Journal. It was very well powered, very well done. 44,000 roughly Swedish men who had their first heart attack, and it was a plumbing issue. So rather than electrical, so they gave them a statin for obvious reasons. They also put them on TRT, and they also gave them PDE5 inhibitors. There was a direct correlation between the amount of PDE5 inhibitors taken per week and overall all-cause mortality. And I have to interject at this point. I owe Dr. Eugene Shippen for this information. He turned me on to this. You're shaking your head. You know about this one already?
But go ahead. No, most people don't.
I definitely included in my book because it's something that is amazing to me. At the top end of that, an 81% all-cause mortality reduction. think about that for a second. I said 81, 81. If you and I could come up with something, Nelson, that, could reduce all-cause mortality by, say, 11%, we'd be having this conversation on our 700-foot yacht in the Bahamas somewhere, right? I mean, that's amazing. And yet, and without getting into the big pharma conspiracies and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't get promoted because those three things I just mentioned are all generic and very cheap. So if you can, I understand, gentlemen that have issues with low back pain, GI, the lower esophageal sphincter relaxation and headache and stuff. But if you can literally and figuratively stomach, say, a small dose, a daily dose of tadalafil, just to, again, avoid that morbidity and mortality issue, it's worth it. And, you can probably get some benefit toward, erectile function as well.
That's thanks a lot for sharing that information, because I think most physicians don't know that you can actually do that, especially cardiologists. They're always concerned about your blood pressure. That's about it, and your lipids with statins, but they don't think about beyond the vasodilation of ED drugs that can actually help. So
it's funny that even occurs with cardiologists, because the drug was originally made for pulmonary hypertension, right?
Angina, right? They found out they were getting erections.
Yeah.
Right. So anything else that it's covering the book that you'd like to mention in your book that people may be excited to read?
Hopefully there'll be something in there. I know this sounds like a loaded answer from a loaded question or whatever. It's not. But I wrote it in a way that hopefully there's something for everybody in there, whether it's, just at-home cryotherapy, literally, I did it in my home during the winter. I just leave the pool really cold. I don't heat it, and I can jump in. Or during the summer, I think it was $150, I got an ice machine off of Amazon, right, shipped to my door to make my own ice so that I could jump in the tub. Cryotherapy is cryotherapy, whether you have, my $275,000 cryotherapy machine over here, which granted is convenient, right, but pretty expensive to put in your own house. You can do a lot of these things at home, and then all the way up to, I talk about stem cells and gene editing, and the peptides are for me super interesting. And cut me off anytime here, because this is where I start to get excited, because the peptides to me are like tinker toys. You can get so many different structures that each one will fit differently. Even just one ligand changes almost completely sometimes the function once it enters the cell. And so that to me is a huge area of research that's going to change things, because we're going to figure out better ways to jigger cellular function. But the biggest issue right now too with that is the effect is very short-lived with peptides, which to some degrees, helps with safety, but to others, efficacy. So we're finding the fine line and the balance between those two. And yeah, I think discoveries there are just going to be multiple, almost monthly. And then, gene editing, that's amazing. We're focused on some of the more rare diseases right now. It looks like we're being very cautious, but with its effect on the immune system, particularly, which I think we're finding is the biggest cause. If you had to pin the tail on one specific area of research, immunology, I think, is where we're headed. Our immune system attacking itself or not stepping up to the plate and doing it properly, I think, is going to be the root of much of the research to reduce inflammaging, we call it now, inflammation causing aging and dysfunction in the cell. But all these tied together are going to be great. And saving it for last, simply because the most recent verdict, a lot of guys in this area of stem cells know about Dr. Berman, right? Who was taking a lot of the arrows from the FDA and others regarding stem cells. And he said, up until the end, no, stem cells are not a drug. And with all due respect to those that are trying to make it safe for all of us, okay, I get where it was coming from. We got to find a way to keep the hucksters and the shysters from killing people or, harming or maiming people. I get it. But, to misclassify it was clearly a mistake, because as of about 10 days ago now, the Eastern District Court in Central California, in which the case was filed where the FDA went against Berman and his associates. They had they call it a conclusion of law and summary of facts. And I said that in reverse order. But the judge, very eloquently, by the way, much more than I'm going to give it justice, his opinion states, no, it's not a drug. And now we can use stem cells in the United States, whether they're autologous, meaning our own, or from umbilical cord, as long as it's done properly. But the biggest crux of that is that it's not considered a drug. So we don't have to go through the investigational new drug studies like you would for any other drug, which we're in the middle of. I mean, I'm a sub-investigator for the post-concussion syndrome study down in San Diego right now. But it's going to change the face of the market because of the availability and its new perception within the law. So that's really exciting. Why? Because the regenerative capabilities of stem cells, it's almost funny, a monkey almost could do it because the stem cells do the work for you. If you match the diagnosis with the right treatment, in this case, if stem cells are appropriate, you can inject an E, you can do it intravenously, and the stem cells know what to do. They can home in on the area that needs fixing. And whether it's your own cells, which will actually engraft, we believe, or someone else's, meaning umbilical cord tissue, which won't engraft, but they'll act as placeholders, the net result is the message gets sent to your bone marrow to, hey, come over here and fix the problem. And there's a lot that comes with the stem cells too, exosomes, and I'll stop after this, I promise. But the contents of exosomes, particularly RNA, where we find there's a lot of communication amongst the system as a whole to fix the problem. It's not as basic and simple as just, well, here's the brick and mortar and we're going to patch the hole in the wall. No, there's a lot more that happens. That to me is really exciting too, because we're going to find ways to jigger that process as well to do all kinds of things. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think the problem is that a lot of these therapies are going to be personalized. I mean, especially if you use your own stem cells, that's a personalized, customized treatment for you. So how can you, approve a drug that has to be modified for every person? So that I see the point whatsoever. It does not fit the definition of a drug, obviously. And we're excited. I mean, CRISPR, and California, believe it or not, some people hate California. I'm obviously biased. I lived in LA for a while, and that's one of the reasons I learned so much about hormones and stuff. But anyways, California is the only state that uses taxpayer money to fund gene therapy and studies. I have a whole organization. I do some coaching and consulting as a community member in some of them. And it's the only state where taxpayers are paying for research on this subject. And CRISPR came from, most of it, the data from California. We have a study that are trying to cure HIV with modifying, genetic code in people with HIV to get rid of the latent virus, the reservoirs, the hidden virus. And that's happening now. They're enrolling studies right now. So, I'm 63. I really hope I can live. I shouldn't be alive. I've been with the virus for 40 years. I'm on borrowed time. But I'd like to live till 20 more years to see what's coming, the tsunami that is not only in medicine. We haven't even gotten into this other topic, which we want. We don't have time for that. The psychedelic therapy, psychotherapy that is coming soon. So I really just hope, because I see it on the horizon. You see it too. It's happening actually in the field right now as we speak. We're about to enter a part of medicine and psychiatry that is going to be revolutionizing. And yeah, there'll be a lot of government agencies trying to get in the way about, how to actually approve these therapies or drugs and all the politics that go around it. But anyways, we're not going to go more into details. We are about an hour. And we can go on this could be a series. I know we can talk about forever. And but I just wanted people to find out how to get a hold of your network, your clinics, et cetera. So what's the main website they can access?
Well, thank you for that. I think probably the easiest way is just go to our website, which is www.psr, Papa Sierra Romeo med.com. I know it really doesn't match anything, but it's our old, what do you call it, URL. So we still use it. But psrmed.com has, our contact information, our phone number, our locations, that sort of thing. And with stem cells, like I have to add, because you can't do that with telemedicine, our location should be growing sooner rather than later. So I hope we'll find, or the listener out there will find a place closer to them, or close enough, I should say, to take advantage.
I'll be posting the links in the description of the video here on YouTube. So I also remind everybody to subscribe to the channel, Excel Mail channel, because we have over 98 videos there and Dr. McLean has been featured at least 2 or 3 times before. We'll do another one of these because you have so much more to share. And you're bursting with all this exciting stuff. And I would really appreciate you joining us today. And thanks a lot for being a great supporter of Excel Mail, everything I do, an old friend. And I'm looking forward to reading the book, by the way. So I'll be ordering from Amazon. There's like a wait list now, right?
No, I will send you this. It's called an advanced review copy.
There you go.
But Nelson, it's always my pleasure. Not for any other reason that it's fun. Really, we should have been doing this more often. It's always a pleasure, my friend, to get together with you. If you want to do more, I'm game for it. It's already been an hour. It feels like we've been talking for 10 minutes.
That's what happens when you love what you do. But anyways, well, hopefully we'll see you in Houston soon, or I'll be in LA for whatever reason. So thanks a lot. Take care of yourself. You have to live, you have to cheat death, right? Now your book is called that. So we have to make sure you're healthy and alive for at least 30, 40 more years. Anyways.
As long as we can, right? Yeah.
Thanks. Well, bye-bye.
Ciao.